All right, I think we're live. Hi, guys. I'm Lindsay Ballinger, and I'm here with our super special guest today, JC Morgan. JC, thank you so much for training us today. I'm super excited about this.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, of course. So, guys, I saw JC do a very similar training topic. Gosh, I don't even know, a couple months ago. And I knew that you guys would definitely benefit from everything that she has to share. So, JC, tell us a little bit about you, how you started doing what you're doing, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an accountant and my background is auditing and forensic accounting. So I have a bachelor's degree in accounting as well as forensic accounting. And what forensic accounting really is just understanding and digesting transactions to get a full picture of the business, either to prevent fraud or to help increase the profits or profit margins of a company. So as an auditor for the state, we did a lot of reviewing state funds and dissecting and ensuring that agencies were using state funds properly. So with that, I've gained this knowledge and understanding of the importance of record keeping and documentation, and how your documentation can really help you save big on taxes. So now I teach my community how to have proper financial record keeping and maintain how to maintain and comply with their record keeping responsibilities by the IRS. So some of my clients are their one-on-one clients that I work with to help get their financial paperwork in order, their financial processes in order, and their record keeping in order. And then I also have clients that I work with to help them maximize their tax savings. So,
oh my gosh. So, yeah, I was going to say so much good stuff. And I'm going to have you share the name of your group toward the end of this so that everyone can find you there, because that's way more than we're going to do in this like super quick interview. All right, so let's dive right in. So record keeping, let's start with record keeping, because I feel like that's kind of like the basics of making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do right. So what are some tips, best practices you have? The majority of the women in this community are network marketers, direct sellers. But I do have several ladies who are Etsy shop. They're tutoring or teaching online, or they do their own like kind of craft business. I do have some coaches and consultants as well, if that helps you. But yeah, let's dive in with record keeping.
So this really goes for any taxpayer. So if you are a network marketing professional, if you are a solopreneur, whatever type of business that you have, if you are a taxpayer, you have the same record keeping responsibilities. So the IRS looks at this as, even if you don't have an LLC. So for instance, if you sell possibly Color Sheet, you might not have a registered name, a registered business with the state, but you are receiving money for sales, or you are receiving money for products and services that you provide to others, and you must report that income. So therefore, you have the same record keeping responsibilities as myself, who is a consultant, the same record keeping responsibilities as a truck driver. If you are incurring income, you have the same record keeping responsibilities as anyone else.
Yeah, I love that. And I also think that's a really important reminder for everyone listening who is a network marketer, because I think sometimes we can be like, well, it's just a side hustle, or, we kind of diminish the important, but it's a business. Like,
Yes.
They're all equal.
It is.
In regards to
definitely a business. And that mindset really goes into the whole money aspect too. And I tell my creatives this. So my business is Create Accounting. So I work with a lot of creatives, and I let them know, your brand is a business. You as a musician, as an artist, as a singer, a poet, you are a business. And so you must treat yourself that way as well.
Awesome. I love that. Okay. So we are like just starting to get into the thick of tax season. So I appreciate you jumping on with us during this time, because I'm sure things have gotten really crazy for you. But so as people are getting ready to start their taxes, or maybe they're handing off their documents to someone to prepare their taxes, what are some things going in that we need to have prepared to make the tax process as streamlined as possible?
That's a really great question. I appreciate you asking that, because the easier you make your taxes for your tax person, the better things will go on both ends, as the professional and as the taxpayer. So you want to make sure that you have your profit and loss statement, complete any tax organizers for that professional, and any types of questionnaires, and obviously make sure that you have your socials together, all of the documents that you've been sent by your employer, your contract people. You definitely want to categorize, separate and organize these items into different folders. So it takes some time to really gather up your things. Number one, to gather up all of these documents from all of these different places. We get that. So that's really one step. And the second step is organizing them into separate folders. So it's very helpful for your tax person to know. And like I said, that profit and loss statement is going to be huge. And your profit and loss statement is simply a financial statement of your sales and your expenses.
I love that. I'm glad you said that, because I was just asking for clarification on that.
I knew you would.
Like, you can tell by your face, or I'm like, okay, so let's talk expenses, because this is a question I get asked a lot from members of my team, or people doing their taxes for the first time. What are some sorts of things that we can count as expenses as business owners?
That is a very great question. And honestly, depending on what business you have, I could go into your house and point out every single item in your home as a possible business expense. But again, like I said, it depends on what profession you are in. So really think of it like a puzzle. It's whatever fits to your specific industry. So I won't be able to give you specifics here on this video, because I don't know exactly what people are in. But for instance, as a consultant, one thing that I spend a lot of money on is software. So tax software, QuickBooks, and different types of things to make sure that I can get my customers documents back and forth. Other things that people might use are scheduling tools that you might have to pay for. If you have to pay for any streaming services to get your product out to the open. So a good rule of thumb, if you can remember this is a great rule of thumb. Any expense that helps you generate more income in your business, that is ordinary and necessary for the course of your work. And that is IRS definition. A business expense is one that is ordinary and necessary for your line of work.
I love that. Okay, let's chat about travel write-offs, because I've heard a couple different things about this. And I get this question a lot as well, because most network marketing companies especially have conferences. So say like my last conference I went to was in Orlando, and we flew down, we rented an Airbnb, had meals, rented a car, all the things, plus the cost of the ticket. So is that all able to be written off? How does that work?
So yes, conferences, conventions, if you're in network marketing. I recently did a business seminar that was like 3 days long. It was really fun, but it was a business purpose. So yes, so those travel expenses for business purposes are also deductible. So you want to make sure that you keep your airport expenses. You want to make sure that you keep track of your Airbnb, meals while you're on the trip, and any other expenses that are relating to you traveling. And here's a really fun bonus that I'll give you. If your kids are hired in the course of your work, you are also able to bring them along as a business trip, and you can kind of make it a family vacation. So I talk more about that in my training series. So yeah, so that's a really great question.
You guys are gonna have to check that out because yeah, that's what I had heard. I was at a conference in the fall and someone was talking about taxes and she was like saying all these things writing off about her trip, and they do like a family trip, but her husband is hired under her and she pays her kids.
Yep.
And I was just like, what? I'm like mind blown. She's like, yeah, we do like a business day at the beginning of the trip and a business day at the end, and then we can write off the hotel and the flight. And I'm like, what?
Yep. That's very true. That's very true.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. So keep that in mind, guys. Retreats, like I hold a retreat for business owners. And I'm like, guys, it's a tax write-off. Like keep your receipt from where you paid me. Like I make sure on the invoice to say it's a business retreat, everything. And what is a benefit of having tax write-offs? Because I know some women on my team are kind of hesitant sometimes to like spend that money because they're like, it's income and like, I need it for other things. But I'm like, but at the end, you're still going to have to pay your taxes on what you have earned. So kind of explain to us a benefit of having at least some tax write-offs.
Yeah, absolutely. So in order to understand tax write-offs, we have to understand what the tax system is in and of itself. Okay, it is just that. It's a system. And so the more income that you generate, you have a higher tax bracket. Okay, so if you're generating more income, you'll have a higher tax bracket, and that percentage is what you are taxed on. So obviously a 10% tax bracket, you would be paying more taxes than say a 7%. Correct? So what you're doing with these tax write-offs, tax deductions, these credits, is you're reducing your total income so that way you get yourself into a lower tax bracket and therefore are paying less taxes. Now, you also want to, we won't be able to go dive into the differences between deductions and credits, but understand those are two separate things. So when you hear somebody talk about the home office deduction, or I'm sure I can write this off, that's a deduction. Now, when you hear people talk about the child tax credit, that's a credit, and that's applied separately and differently to your income than deductions are. So very important distinction to make, but the main point is that the more write-offs you have, the more deductions you have, the less taxes you inevitably pay.
I love that. Can you chat briefly about tax payments? Because I do know once you are making a certain amount of money, I believe, and I could be wrong about how I'm wording this, so please feel free to explain that it's better to I forget even what the word is, but make payments throughout the year instead of
quarterly estimated tax payments.
Thank you.
So all of us as business owners are required to make quarterly estimated tax payments, whether that's a side hustle. As a taxpayer, a business owner, you're required to make those estimated tax payments. Now, I do understand not everyone makes those quarterly estimated tax payments, but the goal is to understand that if you're making more than $600 in your business, then it's time for you to start reporting your income and therefore also making quarterly estimated tax payments. So let's switch gears and pretend we are a W-2 employee. When we work, our job deducts those taxes, and they're the trustee of that money, and they send those taxes off to the IRS on a quarterly basis for us. As a self-employed individual, no one's withholding our tax money, our federal tax dollars. So we have to therefore do that ourselves and send that money into the IRS on a quarterly basis.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for clarifying that. I had another question about expenses, and I was like, oh, I should have just asked that. What was it? Oh, okay. So say, I don't know, I bought a new computer and I don't have the receipt for it. Am I allowed to still write it off?
So the IRS says that you must maintain receipts. Okay. So I like to make this very clear that you should keep all of your receipts. If anyone tells you you don't need to keep your receipts, that's not necessarily true.
Mm-hmm.
But what I will say is what will happen if you do keep your receipts versus if you don't keep your receipts. Okay. If you don't keep your receipts and the IRS comes in and asks you, please provide proof of that $1,500 MacBook computer that you bought, and you don't have anything to substantiate that claim except for your bank statement, the IRS may disallow that deduction, which means you no longer have that $1,500 to reduce your income, which means you have to pay that $1,500, that you have to include that $1,500 in your income. Okay. If the IRS comes in, if the IRS does not come in and does not ask you for a receipt and nothing happens, kudos to you, you know? So it's, you must be able to substantiate your claims. You must be able to provide proof that this actually happened. It's called a source document. And as an auditor, these are things that I would go in and ask for companies to provide. Please provide proof of this expense. And if they were not able to provide that proof, then that's where the findings would come in.
Gotcha. So how long as business owners should we keep our receipts?
You should keep your receipts for 3 years. So for each tax return, you should keep your tax returns for at least 3 years. General rule of thumb, accountants about 6 to 7. It even can go back to 10, depending on the circumstance. But for the very least, 3 years.
Awesome. Yeah, I knew the 3, and then I had heard a 7 too. So that's probably where I had heard that from, is like best practice. Yeah. What are some things that we can do as business owners to avoid a red flag with the IRS or like an audit? What are some?
So really just making sure you're being honest. Just making sure you're being honest and you're keeping your receipts. The thing is that each year auditors have an audit plan, so there's really nothing you can do because you create this audit plan for the IRS creates an audit plan for what type of businesses they will audit for that year. And they lay out strict guidelines on how they will proceed in that type of audit. It's an actual plan. And this is no secret. You can find this on the IRS website. They let you know this is what we're doing. So there's really not a whole lot that you can do as far as how to prevent yourself from being audited. But an audit is not a big deal as long as you're being honest and you're doing things the correct way. You have an accounting professional who is making sure that your documents are organized and you have the proof that you need and you're asking the right questions. It's not something that you should be afraid of.
Yeah. And I think it has such a negative connotation. It's so funny. Like everyone's like, oh, don't want to get audited. Don't want to get audited. And like you said, I think that it's really comforting to hear from a professional who's like, it's not like, if you're doing your stuff, you're asking the right things, you're following, the guidelines and the rules, just being asked. So what if we were to receive like notification that we were getting audited? Can you walk us through like what that looks like?
Yeah. So, and there's different types of audits. So there's reviews and then there's a full-fledged audit. Okay. So in that event, they'll send you a letter of what they're expecting you to provide, and at that time you'll have some time to gather up your information and make sure that you have what's on that list. It's best to work with an accounting profession throughout the year because many of those items that if you get an audit or you have a review, you should already have those things set in place, set aside somewhere. So it's just really at that point a matter of pulling it, not going to find it, But like you said, it's really not. I mean, I think we do audits in our own business all the time. Like I do time audits. And if you understand that the government is a business, is the Internal Revenue System, like this is what their business is to do, then you can just kind of take the emotion away from it and say, you know what, I do audits in my own business. So I'm not doing anything wrong, just following guidelines. And you know what, here's my information. Yeah. Then you're fine.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. All right, before we hop off there, is there any last minute words of wisdom as some of these women are tackling Schedule Cs and their business for the very first time? Anything that you would like to share? Any last minute tip or trick?
Yeah, absolutely. Tackling things for the first time can be a bit overwhelming. So, congratulations to you for getting to the folks watching us for getting to a point where you're filing your taxes and you have that Schedule C. That's a really amazing accomplishment. So there's that, and really, if you just have any questions, just reach out and find the help. That you're not the first person who is going to ask a tax question to your tax professional. Don't be afraid to have them sit down and walk through your tax return with you, and just really stay in the know, because the information is there. You just have to find it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I will say, guys, so my dad was a tax professional. So like he's my my go-to. And there's still times because tax laws change yearly. I mean, right? Yearly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's still times like we were working on our taxes last weekend and we have Google up. And there are a lot of really good answers. Like obviously I can do that with him because he is a tax professional. So I'm not telling you guys just to use Google for everything and not
Yeah.
talk to someone at all. But
I'm sure he has a database that he probably
yeah,
pays for research.
yeah, and he's done it for a really long time. So like the language and terminology is very familiar to him. But I will say the first few times I helped him, I was like, "What? I don't know what this means." Like,
It can be intimidating.
yeah, it can, but there are a lot of really good resources out there in addition to amazing accountants too to help you. So don't get intimidated by it. Don't wait till last minute either. Like if you haven't started gathering receipts, I hadn't gathered up all of my fourth quarter receipts. I'm usually pretty good about keeping.
Good.
Yeah, I try really hard because I really hate sitting down and spending a Saturday night like pulling all my receipts and entering them in my spreadsheet and all of that. So if you guys haven't started yet, I highly recommend doing that. It is February 15th. Like it is time to get thinking about that.
Yeah.
And don't be the other really big perk I have found with working with someone who really understands taxes are those things like, okay, are you sure you don't have any more business expenses to write off? Or, I thought you shipped items and you're like, oh, I can write off shipping. Yes, you can write off shipping, or like different things like that, if it's for your business, or stamps you bought. And it's stuff that you don't necessarily think of. So that's really nice to talk to someone and help you especially your first time through.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. You have to understand what type of tax preparer you're working with. So if you're working with a basic tax preparer, that is someone like an H&R Block who is going to take your information and input the information into the system and make sure your taxes are filed on time. Now, that person may not ask you, well, do you have any more of this? Do you have any more of that? Well, what happened in June? So that type of person, that's more of a tax planner. You want somebody to really look at your taxes and say, this is where I know that you could be saving money and this is how much you should not be paying. That's a tax planner, and that's on a completely different scale than a tax preparer. So I'm a tax planner and I help people throughout the year. So if you're really actually now sitting down to do your taxes, don't expect a whole lot. Honestly, just expect to make sure it's done correctly and on time. And then throughout this year, you can work on saving and reducing your tax burden for next year. Because right now it's too late for all that. Right now it's just get it done. I'm sure Dad would attest for that.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I got lectured a lot my first year in business when we sat down to do taxes, and he's like, well, you went to this conference. Do you have your receipt for your hotel? And I'm like, no. Like I didn't know I could write that off. And he's like, yes. And then, well, did you eat food while you were there? And I'm like, yes. And then you start thinking like, okay, well, I can't go to the food truck because they don't give me a receipt. I should go to this place so I can get my receipt.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah. And it's stuff you realize as you go along, which, that's not a huge deal in the long run. But when I was just doing my taxes for Color Street and when I entered in my hotel and travel and all that stuff, I mean, it saved me like $500. Like I got a $500 refund back from putting all that in. Yeah. And so it adds up quickly. So don't just be like, I don't have time to look for my receipts for whatever, like find the receipts if you have them.
Absolutely.
All right, JC. Well, where can everyone find you? And guys, I will link this below too, so you can just like go click, but tell us where we can find you if we want to work with you or hear more.
Yeah. So if all else fails, you can just inbox me. Like, I'm not an inbox snob. I'll answer questions. But I do have a group called Business Finance Principles for Entrepreneurs. Give them some really awesome tax and financial record keeping advice there. And also it's where I promote my trainings and classes that you're able to take. Currently, I am doing a tax training series where you will learn HSAs, how to hire your kids, and also what your responsibilities are as a self-employed individual. And you can find that by going to inside my group, and there's a link there. But like I said, if all else fails, you can just inbox me.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to sign up for those because that's some really good stuff that I need to touch up on or learn about for the first time. Well, thank you so much. This has been super helpful. I know there are so many people that are going to catch the replay, especially too, who will probably be messaging you or joining your group. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. I love talking taxes.
Of course. Bye-bye.